Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Tyler Cohen. Tyler, welcome back to the podcast, man.
Hey, Quentin. Thanks for having me, man. Glad to be back.
For sure, dude. So this is actually Tyler's second time being on Behind the Muscle podcast. So if you guys are interested in a little bit more of Tyler's backstory, kind of the normal, typical Behind the Muscle podcast episode, you guys can actually go back to episode number 75. Tyler was on the podcast back in November, and you can kind of catch up to speed in terms of Tyler's story. But today, Tyler and I are just going to kind of catch up in terms of what the last 6, 7, 8 months has looked like for him. And we're going to talk about USAs and some other stuff. So Tyler, why don't we pick things up where we kind of left off? So you were last on in November of last year. Why don't you talk about kind of where you were at that time in terms of competing? What was your decision in terms of going into competing at the USAs this year? Why don't you just kind of unpack that a little bit?
Well, so in November, so last November, I was actually due to do, the plan was to do nationals, but honestly, like as time went on and then my off season went on, and it was going pretty well at the time. So I kind of just called my coach up and I asked him, I was like, hey, listen, like, would you be okay with me doing USAs? It's the first contest of the year. And he was like, yeah, like we could do that. And I was like, that's really cool. So the reason why I wanted to do USA is, well, number one, I've done North Americans like 5 years in a row, and I was kind of getting tired of going to Pittsburgh all that time. So I thought, why don't I go to Vegas, and see like what Vegas is about, of course. So, my girl and I agreed, like, if we're gonna go do the show, we're gonna go do the whole thing. We're gonna do the whole thing like we should, So, fast forward, we planned on flying like first class. We, stayed at like a really kick-ass hotel, and everything that I needed was in the vicinity of the venue. So I was pretty good. I just thought, like, I just really wanted to try something new, man. It was time, and luckily it kind of worked out the way I wanted it to. Obviously, like, I would have loved to at least like win my class, but being third at this caliber of a show, I was like, that's pretty damn good, and I was happy with it.
For sure. Now you've been competing for quite a few years, Tyler, right? I mean, did you started as a teenager, if I remember correctly, or early 20s?
Yeah, I started as a teenager. I started competing when I was 19.
Okay. Why don't you just refresh us in terms of, you started competing at 19, refresh my memory, refresh all of our memories in terms of just a little bit of your competition history. You said you've competed at North Americans a bunch. Just unpack that just for a minute, because I know that you've been on the scene for a long time, been competing a long time. You're still very young, but talk about that competition history just a little bit, please.
Well, so when I started as a team when I was 19, I did a couple of local shows, won the team classes in all of them. I did the novice class in a bunch, ended up placing second a whole bunch of times in the novice class. Ended up doing team nationals. I took second as a light heavy against Cody Montgomery. After that, I took it took a year or two off, and the next time I competed was I was 21, and then I did the North Americans the first time. I was in like the fifth call out, so probably shouldn't have even been there in the first place. Came back in 2016, and then I made the first call out. I think I placed 7th or 8th. Then I did North Americans in 17. I made the top 5. I was 5th place. So like, that was really exciting. That was a really exciting year for me, because that was the first time I actually got to go through the whole process of a national show, like go through prejudging, be in the first call out, have the guy tell me, like, hey, listen, you made top 5. And I was like, oh shit, no shit, I made top 5. And then go through, the routine, and then be picked to get a trophy and everything. So that was really cool. And then 2018, I did something different. I went and did the Toronto Pro Qualifiers. You know, at the time, my coach was Canadian. So he was like, why don't you come up here and do the show? And I was like, well, all right. I mean, if you think it's a good idea. So I ended up winning my class as a heavyweight. And I just missed the overall by that much. And they were only giving out one pro card. So, you know, I missed my pro card by that much. And then I did North Americans the same year. And I took third as a heavy. And then I think I took 2019 and 20 off. I was kind of just, you know, just dealing with my own self, just trying to get myself together, my normal life together. Came back in 2021. I did the North Americans again. You know, that I made I think there was a second call out. There's definitely not like a good year for me. And then I came back this year, you know, with, you know, my blinders on, and I had a full off season and a full prep and everything. And I took third at the USA. So that was pretty damn cool, like to do that show and take third.
Do you feel like, and we're going to get kind of into the nitty gritty with USAs, but do you feel like, you know, that third place in the heavyweight division at the USAs this year, do you feel like it was some sort of redemption, or it just kind of like built up your confidence maybe to where it used to be before you had that 2-year period or 3-year period where maybe things didn't go quite as planned?
You know, so it wasn't really so much redemption for me, because I think, you know, I understand where, you know, I took a 2-year gap between competing, you know, so my entire physique was just off. So I already knew that going into prep, and I said, like, you know, I said I was going to do the show. I'm going to do the show no matter what. So coming back from doing North Americans and getting second call out to doing USAs and getting third, it was more or less just like, you know what, let's just stop doing the same thing we do every year. Let's just try something new. So I was like, you know, like, all right, you know, I'm going to go to fucking Vegas, man. Let's see Vegas. I've never been to Vegas. Vegas is like one of the most elaborate places in the US. So why the fuck not? So also being that USA's is probably one of the most prestigious shows in the country. So I thought, you know, I wanted to kind of like really, really test my mettle a little bit, you know? So I thought, let's do this show. And, you know, doing this the first time, being in such a new environment and in such a new area, not really knowing what to expect, I was pretty damn happy with my placing.
Okay, so let's take a step back. Let's talk about kind of the prep overall, Tyler, in terms of for USAs this year. You've had a lot of preps. Why don't you compare this prep to other preps? How did it go? How did it differ? Maybe just talk about some of the highlights or some of the maybe the struggles within this prep compared to other preps, if you don't mind.
Sure. I mean, I've had hard preps, and I've had preps that went pretty smooth. This one was definitely a pretty smooth prep. Definitely compared to last year. You know, last year I was, you know, very, very soft starting out. So I really had to like grind really hard with the cardio, especially to make sure I was getting in shape. But this time, you know, I really kept it together in the off season, you know, which set me up pretty good for prep. Because really, how many weeks I did 18 weeks this time versus 25 for the last one, you know. So this time obviously was shorter compared to the last year. I didn't have to do as much cardio, you know. I felt good training all the way up until maybe like a few weeks out, you know, like a few weeks out, I was kind of like, all right, now we're really kind of hurting here, but that's obviously expected. But this one was pretty damn good. I really couldn't have been happier, because this was, I would say, was my best overall look to date. I actually didn't expect to be as big as I was on stage compared to everybody else in that first call out.
Cardio, how much cardio did you get up to, and how did that compare to maybe some other preps?
So my cardio, I got up to one 45-minute session in the morning, and then another 30-minute session post-workout, or the last one before I go to bed. It was all steady state on the recumbent bike, or whichever bike that I could find, recumbent bike or speed bike, whatever. Compared to last year, I was still doing the bike, but I was doing 2 45-minute sessions. And one of those sessions was, had 20 minutes of HIIT cardio in there. So last year I really had to bust my ass to actually get in shape. This year it was like, okay, well, I have to bust my ass, but not so hard to where I was really killing myself, you know?
Now, you mentioned something about you kind of stayed a little bit tighter or kept yourself a little bit more together in terms of this past off season. So do you feel like that really set you up for success for a little bit smoother prep? And if so, what did you do to kind of keep yourself together? Was it just keeping your body weight, just lower? Were you leaner in terms of the off season going into prep? Does that kind of make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, compared to last year, as I took the time off, I was kind of like, I wasn't really going to the gym much. I was kind of really just eating whatever the hell it is that I wanted. And obviously, my weight got pretty up there, and like my body composition, suffered from that. And then going into an off season from that, I got up to around like 280 pounds, but it was not like a bodybuilder's 280 pounds for sure. So, but fast forward to this year, I got up to, I think it was 255 pounds, but it was definitely a lot solid than the previous off season. I started the off season right out of the prep from last year. So I thought that was like a bit of a better idea, obviously. And then that's what set me up. Staying on a plan, all through the year is what set me up for a successful prep this year.
Perfect. Yep. And that's something that I hear again and again, Tyler, with, these, all of you athletes, is like, man, like the off season is a type of prep, right? It's just as important, if not more important. A lot of guys say it's more important than the actual prep if you are trying to progress within bodybuilding. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to touch on your coach. I think it's like Freakmaker or Freakmaker1 on Instagram. What's his actual name?
So about that. So Darren Melling did all of my preps except for the ones I did for my teenage years. I worked with Darren for about, give or take, almost 8 years. So he did. I'm sorry, Quentin, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
No, we're just talking about your coach. Freakmaker, is that your current coach or is that your previous coach?
Well, he's now officially like my previous coach. After the USAs, I was very happy with what I came with. There were really no issues I had. I just thought overall, I just felt that myself as a whole, as a bodybuilder, I feel like I should kind of be, a few steps ahead of where I currently am. I've always been happy with Darren, and, there's really nothing against him at all. He and I are still friends and we keep a close relationship, but I thought it was just kind of like, maybe it's just time to try something new. And when I talked to him about it, he was more than fine. He understands, just like any other coach should understand. We all have this goal in mind to, win a show, turn pro, do well as a pro. So now I've currently, signed up to work with Matt Jansen, and that just started. That's exciting, man, because I've had so many of his athletes on. Obviously, he had athletes. The gentleman that won your class is an athlete of Matt Jansen, and been a guest on the podcast a couple of times. Awesome dude. But I've had so many Matt Jansen athletes on.
and I'm talking pros, I'm talking, NPC, and time again, it's nothing but like, Matt Jansen is like, he's the professional. He knows what he's obviously doing. So that's exciting, man. I'm so excited for you. I didn't know that. Now, why don't you talk about your decision to go with Matt? Obviously, it's pretty clear to most people that are going to be watching and listening to this, but just from your own personal perspective, why did you choose Matt? Because Matt's a great coach. There's a lot of great coaches out there. There's a lot of elite coaches, and I think there's probably some coaches that are maybe even above Matt at this point in terms of, just having more experience coaching, but Matt is in that top echelon. But for you personally, why did you choose Matt, and how excited are you, Tyler, to be starting to work with him? Because from my perspective, Matt is a game changer when it comes to a top amateur wanting to get that pro status. So what say you?
So let me start here again. I've worked with Darren Melling for 8 years, and I loved him as a coach. And, I've never had any true issues with him. Again, it was making that decision was more or less just, I wanted to try something new, but being of how much I respect that guy, I knew that, like, if I really am going to make this change, I really want to work with somebody that's really going to push me over to that edge. And that I personally thought was really up there in the coaching, in that coaching echelon. So, there were, a couple of different guys that, I was looking at. I think, it was obviously Matt, Dom Super Sliced, and a couple others. And the reason why I picked Matt was because I've seen, the handful of guys that I truly do like, Brett Wilkin being one of them, probably one of my favorite bodybuilders, like right now, currently. And I've seen where he's, dude went from like classic physique weighing like a $180, like soaking wet, to, guys now like a 280-pound monster. And that was like, I think, give or take, in like a 2.5-year time span. That's not really a long time. So I thought, all right, well, that's the kind of change that I'm looking for. So, and that's the kind of change that I see on average of Matt's athletes. So I thought, all right, well, this is definitely what I'm looking for here. So I might want to talk to this guy. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. So I know you guys are kind of, so has Matt kind of put together a game plan, or are you guys really just in the beginning stages of the coach athlete relationship?
We're right now, we're in the very, very beginning, because it was only last Saturday that I reached out to him, and we just started the process of, getting me acclimated. So, and also really bad freaking timing. Like, I ended up testing positive for COVID-19. So I have to now like wait for that to clear. I've had that, I think, for about like a week and a half. I'm starting to get out of it. So I messaged him this morning, and I said, like, hey man, I'm starting to feel better. Let's get going if we can. But yeah, we're still in the very early stage. But I'm really excited to start working and getting going, because the plan is to go back to Vegas next year, or wherever, the USA is, and, fingers crossed, hopefully win the whole damn thing.
Love it, man. I'm excited for you, Tara. That's super cool. Now let's talk about USA's this year. We've kind of we've brought it up, and that's a big reason why I wanted to bring you on. I was, your future is very bright. Things are going to be great with you and Matt. That'd be awesome. Come back next year, USA's, win the overall, get your pro card. But I was really impressed with the package that you did bring this year, and then kind of what you've been talking about, just, having those couple off years, and then, just how prep went last year at North Americans. I think you should be very proud, which I know you are, of your showing this year at USA's, because from nationals in December. I mean, that was a wild, tough, nationals. USA's this year stacked. I think North Americans, a lot of the guys that didn't get their pro cards at USA's, they're going over to North Americans. I've had some guys, I'm having more guys on that are going to be some top contenders at North Americans. I think nationals this year is going to be very competitive. So we're really starting to see, coming out of 2020, we're kind of starting to see a resurgence, I think, of the strength of some of these national shows, these pro qualifiers, which is awesome. So USA's this year. Why don't you just walk us through? You get into Vegas. Why don't you walk us through from, kind of peak week up to pre-judging on Friday, and let's just unpack that. How did that all unfold?
Well, I mean, starting with peak week, I think that it's definitely a very smooth peak week. I got to Vegas the Wednesday before the show, because the show started on Friday and it was a 2-day show. So I got there Wednesday. I think most guys got there Tuesday, but I got there Wednesday. Settled into my hotel, sent Darren pictures, of course, because Darren did my prep for USA's. Just making sure that, that I had everything that I needed. Of course, like I was, drinking, a gallon and a half of water all the way up into the show to keep myself nice and full. So everything that I pretty much needed by my hotel, I stayed at the Cosmopolitan. So there was like a Walgreens and a CVS like nearby. So I had probably around like 8 gallons of water inside my hotel. I had a microwave sent to my hotel. I had all my food packed and everything like ready to go, like frozen. And I just threw it all in the refrigerator. I didn't have to do any cooking. So that was like a huge godsend, because I just made sure I just did everything like beforehand, because I did not want to have to cook or do anything like that. Like when I got there, I wanted this to be as stress-free as possible, which, my coach can only do so much of that. I feel like I take definitely like some responsibility in that. So I made sure that everything was done before and I didn't have to do anything. I had to go to the store like maybe like once or twice, but that really isn't like anything. Most of the time when I was there, I cabbed everywhere. Like that wasn't like a big deal. So being there was really pretty stress-free. I stayed at the hotel. To the host hotel was only like it was just a few minute drive. So I cabbed there all the time. But then, when it was really time to get into business, for prejudge, I was kind of, I wasn't really nervous, even though this was, a new environment and a new show to me. I didn't really have any, anxiety or anything like that. Cause, this is something that I've done like, quite a few times already. Like, it doesn't matter what show it is for me. So I was really just ready to get up and do the damn thing. So by the time I actually put my foot on stage, I was really happy to be up there. They took us out in groups, and then we had our 30-second individuals, and then we had that first call out. So during prejudging, when it was about that first call out, at that point, it's like, okay, I'm confident, but I'm also like, I'm unsure. Like, I was also the first guy to do everything because of, I guess, my name and my number. So I knew if they didn't call my name first, like that was it. So when I heard Steve Weinberg call my number, I was like, yes, let's go. All right. So they ended up putting me in that 3rd or 4th spot position. So when we got off stage, I was like, okay, I either made like 3rd or 4th. In my head, I was like, it probably took 3rd. And Saturday, for finals, I got there like a touch late, and the guy was just like, hey, listen, like you made top 5, like you got to get in line. I was like, all right, cool. And then I did, my routine, and then I ended up taking 3rd at the show. So overall, like I was really happy with the package that I brought. I think it's the best package that I brought to date. considering I was actually, I think on actual show day, I was 3 pounds. Give or take 5 pounds lighter than when I weighed in. Yeah. So let's say, I think I was 218 the previous year on show day, and I was 215 for show day this year. So that was so I was lighter, but bigger on show day, which was cool. So all said and done, being there, like, I was definitely happy with my placing, my package, and just the overall experience.
Beautiful, man. Now, did you get any of the judges' feedback after the USAs in terms of some things that they would like to see you work on or not?
I didn't get any of the judges' feedback, but I already heard it from Matt that, like, he just says that I just didn't have the true conditioning to actually win, which I already knew to begin with. I think I was like, even though it was my best to date, I still think that was definitely the one thing I needed to improve on. It's like I was close, but not there. So if anything, it was probably my conditioning.
Okay. Now, is the conditioning something that has always kind of held you back, or was that more specific just to the USAs this year?
No, I think that's always been one of the deciding factors. I've always, there have been shows where I was off. There have been shows where I was really close to hitting it, but I don't think I've ever really truly, hit it. Cool. So I think, especially now with being with Matt, I'll definitely probably hit that.
For sure. Yeah. I don't think Matt allows any of his athletes to show up not conditioned, right? So that's got to be encouraging for you. Now, in terms of, like, I know as bodybuilders, everybody always wants to quote unquote get bigger, but obviously, there's a limit in terms of when you are, an amateur, because you've got certain weight limits. But in terms of body parts that you would like to focus on, maybe just adding a little tissue to in the next coming months, what are those body parts, or what are some of those areas that you really want to focus on outside of just conditioning, Tyler?
I think, Matt says he wants to improve my lower body. So he definitely wants to have my legs like match up to my upper body. I obviously, me as a competitor, I always think like, I want to put like 10 pounds of tissue everywhere, but realistically, I still have to make that 225 gap if that's still, what we want to do. But definitely my lower body, calves, hamstrings, quads, adductors, everything, glutes need to be up to, because my glutes, I don't think my glutes showed up very well this year. So I need to make sure that those are definitely pushing up against the skin and that they're, that they're dialed in correctly. How
have you typically trained up to this point? Because I know Matt kind of has a very specific way of training. How do you normally train, Tyler?
I kind of follow the progressive overload type of tactic. I usually have like a lot of warm-up sets. And what I mean by warm-up sets, like I'm still training heavy with those sets, but I'm not going to true failure. There's probably 1 or 2 sets that I'm really going to true failure, and then I'll do a back off set after that. So my training isn't anything like high tech or anything special. It's more or less just like, I want to see how many reps I can get with as much weight on the bar as I can. Obviously doing it with very strict form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Simple, but effective, right?
Exactly. It's not sexy, but hey, it works.
That's right, man. That's right. Okay. So we're going to kind of just finish up here in a minute. I want to ask you just, in terms of future bodybuilding for you, Tyler, what's your ultimate bodybuilding goal? Like, first of all, what's your next goal? I'm assuming it's to get your pro card. And then what do you want to accomplish as a competitive bodybuilder before you're like, hey, I'm done competing?
Well, so I'm 28 now. By the next time I compete, I'll be 29. So I definitely, before I hit 30, obviously, yeah, the goal obviously is to win my pro card, but winning a national title is more important to me. You know, the pro card will come with that regardless. So that's the short-term goal. The long-term goal is that, you know, I want to, after that, compete in pro shows and do well. So that's like, you know, the medium range goal. And obviously, you know, the ultimate goal is to get to that Arnold Classic and that into the Mr. Olympia. And just have a successful career in this overall. You know, I've put in enough time with it that, you know, I'm not going to stop here.
Yeah, for sure, man. Any words of wisdom, any advice for maybe some of the younger listeners, Tyler, that are, you know, thinking about maybe competing for the first time, or they're just getting into this bodybuilding thing? I really feel like the bodybuilding culture, the fitness culture has changed drastically over the last several years because of social media. There's just so much fake news, misinformation out there when it comes to bodybuilding and a lot of other things, but we won't go there. But my point being, I just feel like there's just so much trash out there when it comes to like, what does it really take to be a bodybuilder? What does it take to be a competitive bodybuilder, an elite bodybuilder? Like, what does it take to get a pro card? Because I had a guest on yesterday and he hit the nail right on the head. He's just talking about, like, I asked him kind of the same thing. He's like, man, just basically just said, you know, just shut up and do the work, you know, just stop saying all the stuff that, oh, like, I'm going to be Mr. Olympia when you haven't even competed in your first competition yet. Like, just be quiet, you know, do your thing, put in the work. But what would you want to say to maybe your younger self or to some younger listeners about just bodybuilding and maybe some lessons that you've learned over, you know, the last, you know, 10 years of you competing?
Well, just to backtrack a little bit, you know, I think I was part of that generation where social media was kind of a new thing. So I didn't quite understand it, nor did I really even care for it. I just wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to train. I wanted to do what I needed to do so I can hit those goals that I had. So to the younger generation now, like, you have to make sure you really want to do this without all that, you know, all that fluff and marshmallows and all that stuff. You know what I mean? You really have to want to do this. And when I mean want it, you have to want to go train every day. You have to want to eat 6 meals every day. You have to want to do cardio. You know, at the end of the day, like, you may not want to do this all the time, but that's where discipline comes in, you know? So I think there's a huge difference. I know I've said this before to somebody. There's a huge difference between being disciplined and highly motivated, because I've seen all the time where some people do get their pro cards, but then after that, what happens? Nothing, right? So that at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you were never disciplined. You were just highly motivated. At the end of the day, it's like, you really got to figure out how much you want this. And you have to want it without all the social media and and YouTube stuff and all that. And don't get me wrong, social media, YouTube, all that stuff, that's great. That's great stuff. That's great to use for your brand and use for you to, you know, to get your name out there and all that. But putting that all aside, you got to want it if that didn't even exist. So that's kind of like my take on it.
Love it, man. One last question here, Tyler, and then I'll kind of give you the platform to share anything as we wrap up and close out today. Just kind of looking back on this last prep, I mean, it sounds like it was very successful. You're very happy with the package you brought. Was there any lessons or anything that you kind of learned from this last prep that you would maybe like to share with us or enlighten us with?
I think the key really is, it's like, you know, when you're really getting down to those last couple of weeks and you're like really getting into that nitty gritty and you're kind of just like, you know, damn, dude, this is a lot, where you really just got to see that light at the end of the tunnel. You know, at the end of the day, like, you know, you put in this work to accomplish this goal that you have. You might as well see it through. You know, like I said, I've seen how many people, you know, like they'll get tired up until a certain point and then they'll stop. But you really just got to find a way to just keep going. You know, like I said, you really got to figure out how much you want it. That's all, really.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right. Any shout outs, any final thoughts, any final words? The platform's yours, Tyler, and then I'll do a quick outro and that'll be a wrap, my man.
I mean, for this past prep for the USAs, you know, I had a lot of support from, you know, my girlfriend, Marianne. You know, she's been so supportive since she and I have been together. She and I have been together for, you know, just about 7 years, you know. So she's been through, you know, most of my bodybuilding career, that's for sure, especially up until this point. And, you know, I obviously have to give, you know, a huge shout out to, you know, Darren Melling. You know, he was my coach for, you know, a long time, and, you know, he did my USA's prep, and I'm definitely, you know, damn well proud of, you know, what we brought. And, you know, I'm glad that, you know, everything, you know, ended on a good note, and that you know, he's not necessarily my coach anymore, but I always wish the guy, you know, the best of luck. I have the utmost respect for that guy. You know, I'm just glad that, you know, that we can keep a really good relationship, you know, even though like things have kind of just ended there. And also, you know, of course, you know, my new coach, Matt Jansen, you know, I'm just really, really looking forward to working. And, you know, I just want to start as soon as possible, because, you know, that goal is to, you know, win that USA title next year.
Awesome, man. If anybody wants to connect with you, if anybody wants to reach out to you, is Instagram the best way to connect with you? And if so, what is your Instagram, Tyler?
Instagram is at tcohen34. Real simple.
Cool. All right, man. Great catching up with you. I appreciate you coming on, man, chatting with me, just kind of wrapping up USAs. I did not know about, you know, Matt Jansen, so I appreciate you kind of sharing that with us. And I look forward to getting you back on, man, at some point and talking shop. Hopefully the next time I have you on, dude, it'll be leading into USAs next year.
Yeah,
and I'll get
absolutely.
you on as the 2023 USA champion. So thank you so much, Tyler. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again, Quinn.
You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If it wasn't for all of you, the podcast wouldn't exist. As we wrap up this conversation with Tyler today, if you guys would just do 2 quick things for me. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers. Now, for some of you, that may not seem like a lot of subscribers, but to me, that's a lot of subscribers, because about a year ago at this time, this YouTube channel had right around 100 or less. So within the year, we've just gained a lot of listeners, gained a lot of followers. And if you want to stay up current on all the Behind the Muscle podcast episodes, just make sure you add yourself to that subscriber list in terms of Behind the Muscle podcast on YouTube. And then another quick favor I'd ask of all of you, please take this episode of Tyler, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Tyler, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.